Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Vanda's back with Carpe Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed, don't like, comment, subscribe, and subscribe. This time we're covering set 13, Dragon Empire Stravairina. Okay, so normally when I put in like the title, it's typically the main grade 3. This time it's the exception because obviously the main grade 3 of this deck that's going to be on the Vanguard circuit most of the time is Nirvana. However, this deck is specifically, as the title entails, is built around Stravairina. Now, what I mean by specifically is there is no other crossover dress besides Straw. Now, you may be wondering, what was my reasoning for this? Because here's basically the backstory of this deck. While I was on college campus trying to, figure out how I was going to basically do the fight video for the day Stravairina came out, I was like, how do I want to run this deck? And I did the math, and I was like, there's enough new prayer dragons and Stravairina to show them on the deck at 4 of, and I literally don't have to do anything else. And I thought about it for a second. I was like, well, maybe I want to run Vills, because if I only hit Straw into damage zone and heal it out, I need to find a way to bounce it back, or Mirrors to manage my CB. And my exact words were, the deck either works or it doesn't. I've done dumber things, and lo and behold, it for some reason works. So let's go and get the start, shall we, and see what we got. First up today, we have our starter, Trickstar, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 5k base, contains rear guard, it cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. That's all there is to it. Honest to God, this was actually the one deck I was planning on running Surprise as my starter in, simply because since you only have one crossover dress in this deck, and since Reno searches Trickstar, that means all you have to do is just straight up have a Trickstar in deck by the time you hit grade 1, and you are good. But the reason why I made Trickstar my starter here instead of some Surprise Egg is if I actually put Trickstar in as my in the main deck and I put Surprise Egg as my starter, I have to drop one of the Prayer Dragons down to 3, which I did not feel like doing. That's literally the only reason why Trickstar is still this is because I refuse to drop a Prayer Dragon down to 3 copies. So all around though, pretty solid skill. It can't be chosen by opponent's card effects, so unless like they board nuke you with their own Stravairina, they're not touching this thing, which is pretty solid. Again, you can run Surprise Egg in this card's place. Hell, you could probably not run an extra Trickstar at all and then just have 3 Trickstars as a main deck, but I don't like taking that chance, and like I said, I'd rather have the 4 Prayer Dragons. So what up, Trickstars? I ride deck, boy. Then we have our Overtrigger Dragon Deity King of Resurgence Drag Beta, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger in your deck, or in a vote as a trigger with that card, draw a card, choose one mutes. It gets plus 1 for the turn. If you have it during your check, activate its additional effect, you can choose one of your Vanguards to stand it. So, regards if you damage check and drive check this, free 1 million in a draw, and then if you drove check it, stand the Vanguard. Now, the Vanguard standing ability that it gives to the rear guard is not a hard once per turn. And we know the rear guard you're only going to be able to stand with this effect, aka Stravairina, can board stand the entire rear guard not once per turn. So, when you combine 2 non-once per turn board restands ability, what do you get? Brokenness! 1 of Drag Veda. You can run Asphoria, because I think Asphoria bounce any normal unit from drops on the hand. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't looked at Asphoria since it came out, but if it does bounce any normal unit back to hand, then it's nice, I guess, for the Virina recycling play if you're doing what I'm doing and just don't run any other crossover dress. However, offense, big numbers, big beat stick, triple drive, 1 of Drag Veda. And then we move on to our normal triggers. We run 3 copies of Blaze Staff Monk Chu Kusa, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 5k base. I knew I forgot to change something. I forgot to change the text here to draw trigger. All around though, you can really run any draw trigger in this thing spot, because we run a total of 7 draws, the other 4 being Flare Dragon. And the reason why you're doing 7 draws is because since you only have 1 crossover dress, and that is Straw, which means half of your Prayer Dragons can't do anything because they require being original dresses, and then the Vanguard can't do anything without Straw, because Straw is the only crossover dress, and the Vanguard only works on crossover dress abilities. You're going to want as many draws as possible to draw into them. Now, not to jinx myself, because typically when I say something, I jinx myself. I've consistently drawn Stravairina in what I consider to be my opening hand every game. And what I consider to be my opening hand is basically before we start playing. It doesn't matter if it's before I mulligan or after I mulligan. As long as it's before I get to grade 1, I count it as my opening hand, and I tend to pull it on that exact draw right before I get to grade 1. So I mean, take that as you will. Though either way, 3 Chokusa. You can really make this any draw trick, but I like to have it just in case so you can dig through your straws very quickly. Then we have 4 Flare Veils, also to dig through the straws very quickly. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k power. Continues guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 gears plus 5k shield. Cool. 10k shield is nice to have, especially because most of the time in the early game you're gonna spam the board as much Prayer Dragon as possible. So if you only see 1 straw that entire game, that straw is basically instant game, or you're just setting up for that straw for later and you just want to board rush your opponent. So Being able to increase your hand with the draw triggers to bounce back from that board rush is pretty nice. But also being a nice 10k shield is pretty helpful towards the late game if your opponent's still kicking then. And then we have our 4 crits and Burning Flow Dragon Grade, so a boost, 50k shield, 4k power, critical trigger, auto react, amount of boosted. Put a soul, choose where music, 2k for the turn. That 2k does nothing, and it doesn't need to go to soul necessarily, because I mean, granted there are 2 cards that quote unquote compete for soul, but I mean, you are going to use one over the other a lot more than you would think so. So it's not really a soul problem, but I mean, if you really run into it, it's a free soul charge, and you do want to run crits because your Vanguard has triple drive and your board restanding at least once. So I mean, you'd be crazy not to run 4 crits. Then we have 4 copies of Blaze Bane and Rioni, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power, standing healing spell is just a free heal. I don't like the effectives too much. I prefer a consistent 15k shield rather than the fluctuating 10 to 25. That really just depends on very specific moments in the game. But if you're running the effectives, go ahead, or you can really make this any heal you want. You can make a Rona like in my cross-dress deck. I have both Rioni and Rona at 2 copies each for theming wise, obviously. But because Rioni came out to the closer time of release of Nirvana Haeva, aka Nirvana Jiva, which was the same set as she was released in, might as well put her in the deck as a 4-of. Then move on to our normal units. We have 3 more copies of Trickstar. Again, he cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. I mean, when push comes to shove, you might have a Trickstar on the board, which is nice just to say, I have an unkillable rear guard. Try to touch me now, bitches. But outside of that, he's pretty much here for crossover dress, and that's it. Again, you can take that chance and just replace this with Surprise Egg, because as long as you don't lose all 3 of these before you get to grade 2, which is almost impossible, you're good. But I rather not take my chances, and again, I just like to have the full Trickstar, so 3 of. Then we move on to our grade 1s. We run 4 copies of Blazing Heavenly Break Equipped Dragon, Kal Moldak, grades 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. My friend now hates this card, and I now love this card because this was my least favorite prayer dragon that was released with the Heavenly Blaze cards, and yeah, he quickly became my favorite. From the game, I believe, goes up today. I think it's Tuesday, October 3rd at 2:30 p.m. exactly at the time of recording this. I'm pretty sure that the fight between Yu and Gi that I recorded is up on the channel already, or it's premiering now as we speak. I'm pretty sure. I don't really remember the dates of when this is going up, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Anyways, his abilities continue as all these cards auto-dresses get auto rear guard. When it attacks, choose one of your opponent's vanguards, and it gets plus 2k power ton about it for each grade of that unit. And auto-dress of this unit is the original dress of it. So, all around, pretty solid, it's an 8k swing vanilla, so it's targetable, which is great because your opponent's going to want to kill this, because I promise you, when you're early game rushing your opponent, this is the most dangerous thing on your board, because it doesn't matter if they kill it or not, and not to mention the fact, because you can just revive it, but also the fact that they know this is going to become a beat stick later, especially if it plays on Griffle Gila, where unlike all the other generic cards that only gave it times its grade cut in half, this one counts it for each and every grade, which means if you're playing against Griffle Gila, that's a free 20 or 22k, and that does a lot, especially when your Stravairina is at least a 23k base already. 4 of Kamalak, very good for early game rush, and not to mention the fact he's just a big beat stick on legs when he's in the original dress. So 4. The only downside is I wish he had a rear guard skill for that, but I mean, honestly, he'd be too good at that point. Also, his wings are cool. Then we have 4 copies of a card that is really good in this deck, Blazing Heavenly / Equipped Dragon, Drawhas. So actually, I just recorded the Nirvana cross deck profile about half an hour ago, and I pretty much said there that I had just learned about its 2 different things that it can call from drop and not just from deck, but also it has to call something different than itself. But it's still good, and in this deck it's even better because you have more targets in this deck that it could actually call. So anyways, grade 1 with boost, 5k shield, 8k base. I really love his axe, sword handles, whatever they are, and his wing design. I just love everything about this card, really. Auto placed on rear guard circle. If your Vanguard is a Nirvana, counterboss will retire another rear guard. Search your deck or drop zone for a total of 2 cards with Blazing Heavily in their different card names from each other and this unit, and call them to rear guard circle as rest. And if you search your deck, you shuffle, and if you retire a rear guard in the crossover to state, draw a card. You are never going to do this. Unless your opponent, hits your Stravairina on board with, some bullshit effect that's at the end of your turn you lose. You're not going to kill that Stravairina because, again, it's the only crossover dress in your deck. But the fact that this thing by CB1 and killing any other rear guard, and it can be called by any means, so the other prayer dragon that can call stuff, or Nirvana skill, which means you can just kill the thing that called it. You can then call 2 more things, and then automatically gives you 3 targets, 3 different named targets for Stravairina with the Trickstar. That's 4. All you need is literally 1 more Prayer Dragon, and you're good to bring out Stravairina at full power. All around, Drawhas is an amazing grade 1 in the deck. The fact that he can call from deck, he can call from drop zone, he can proc off a Prayer Dragon because, in worst case scenario, if you have to kill a crossover dress, you get at least a draw out of it. All around, he is an amazing grade 1. I love his skills so much, and it's just a great card 4 of. Now we have 4 copies of our PG and Sparkle Rejector Dragon. Great on boost, 0 sources, K base, continue Sentinel. You may have to throw some Sentinels in deck. I'm put on Guard Circle. Choose one of these. It cannot be hit in battle. And if your hand is 2 or more cards in it, choose a card from your hand discard. Standard PG. That's what basically that means if this and only one of the cards is in your hand, you place it on Guard Circle. You can be as aggressive as well in the early game. And with the way this deck wants to play, you want to be aggressive in the early game. Like you want to hit your opponent with everything you have in the early game. Call down Calm Deck. Maybe call down this thing in the front row just so you can rush your opponent with it. Call down the Grade 2 Prayer Dragon that calls from deck. Call on the other Grade 2 Prayer Dragon that doesn't call from deck, but just exists just to exist. Like, all around, what you want to do with this deck is rush as early as possible, push them to high damage, so when you go into Straw, when they're at Grade 3, you are going to be hitting for death. But for Sparkle Rejector, like it's really good when your opponent counterattacks you after you rush them, you throw it down, you defend yourself. And if you see how I play Nirvana in general, you go down to low hand cards very quickly if you play like me, and this card comes in real handy. So for Sparkle Rejector Dragon, you can make this Twin Buckler Dragon because they have the exact same skill, but I prefer Sparkle Rejector Dragon because it can have the same set as Nirvana. Now, if they ever give us a Prayer Dragon PG, whether it has this skill or not, and it's just the standard PG, I'm running that Prayer Dragon because it's a Prayer Dragon, which means it's callable via Nirvana skill, and it can proc off more targets for any of the Vairinas. So for Sparkle Rejector. Then we move on to our last grade 1 in the deck. One of in the ride deck, none in the main deck of Heart Pounding, Blaze Main, and Reno. Grade 1 boost 5k shield, AK base. Auto when she was rolled upon by Snuggling Blaze Main and Rayu. Subject to 1 Trickstar call to rearguard and shuffle your deck. And continues rearguard during your turn if you have a Prayer Dragon in the same column master, she comes 5k power. All around pretty solid. Sadly, I really wanted to run her in this deck's main deck, like how in the original, when Nirvana first came out with Crossover Dress, I really wanted to run her and Rayu in the main deck as beat sticks. But sadly, with the way Bushy revealed cards, there was literally not enough room to put them in the main deck because you could run all the Prayer Dragons that they gave us, which is only 3 at 4 copies, and then all the crossover dresses at like 3 or 4 respectively, and you pretty much had no space for Reno and Rayu, sadly. But I mean, hey, if you found a way to run her in the main deck, she had 13k base on rear guard, and then auto the Trickstar skill, which is all around pretty solid. Again, more reasons why you could just stick with these 3 and turn this into a surprise egg, but hey, again, just in case, I like to have the extra copy in deck because you never know, and again, being able to call Trickstar is not bad, and I really wish I could find a way to use on rear guard, or at least I wish this was a Vanguard skill, because I tell you what, in this deck, that would be broken considering how much you want an early game rush. Then move on to our grade 2s. Run 4 copies of Blazing Heavenly Spearhead Equipped Dragon Nadika. I remember this card used to be my least favorite. Then in that one game that I believe goes up today, where I pretty much just, spoiler, I just always opened this for some reason. I slowly began to like cold deck more and more to the point where I now hate Nadika. We're not hating Nadika, but I like him a lot less. Anyways, Nadika, grade 2 and set 5k shield, 10k base. All of this card becomes an original dress. Soul Blast 1, choose one of this card's outer dresses, and it gets continuous rear guard. During the battle that this unit attacked, when you opponent card cross famous guard circle, them is called 2 or more at the same time till end of turn. So all around pretty solid. Something I like about all these Blaze Dragons, except for this one, which doesn't have it, but again he calls out 2 more, so he gets the exception for that. Is I like how all these new Blaze Dragons that have come out, they all what's it called? They all have given their outer dresses new abilities. Like, I think they used to give them abilities when crossover dress first came out, but after that it was more along the lines of if this card becomes an original dress, do XYZ comparatively, or I guess most of the time it was always like do the original dress, because like Brahamada and not Garo Vairina, but it did involve Garo Vairina, Galandite, but the point is like the fact that these guys give the outer dress abilities, I just like that. Either way though, being able to force out 2 cards from hand at a time, even if it's only for a turn, is great, because A, when you do this you're probably going to be on Nirvana in this deck, which implies the fact that you're going to be swinging twice with a card that revolves around 4 cards drop in total, and the Vanguards, like no matter what, they're probably either dropping 2 cards this turn and taking 2 free damage, or they're dropping 4 cards this turn and possibly taking 1 damage, or dropping 6 cards this turn and taking none. Like, because most of the times if someone's blocking the Vanguard, they're going to take a 15k for a 1 to pass, or if that's not a 1 to pass, they're immediately dropping 2 cards, either PG or 2 triggers. Like, 4 of Nadika, all around, very solid grade 2, forces out pressure, and it's nice to have, even if it does eat up a little bit of the soul, but it's not the card you always want to go for soul blasting, because the card you want to go for soul blasting is 4 copies of Blazing Heavenly Render Equipped Dragon Arpara. So, grade 2 to set 5k shield, 10k base. The main reason you want to rush in the early game, auto when placed on rearguard circle other than from deck, so sadly Draw House can't proc it off if you call it from deck. However, if you use the skill to call from drop, it will proc it off. Or, you can call from Nirvana skill, and if you find a way to call it from during the battle phase, even better. Soul Boss 1, ditch 1, subject to 1, Prayer Dragon, call it to rearguard shuffle deck. It can call itself, but obviously you won't proc it off. Here's the important part though. Soul Blast 1, ditch something, call this, counterblast, kill this, get it right back, and let's just say this is already in your drop zone. Then use this thing skill to Soul Blast 1, ditch something, and then call out this. By Soul Blasting 2 and ditching 2 cards, you got out most of a full board of just straight up Prayer Dragons. Cool. And then his other ability is auto when he becomes an original dress, draw a card, and then choose one of this card's outer dresses until end of turn, until every your opponent's next turn, you cannot be chosen by opponent's card effects. Which is great, and that's why I feel I can take a little bit more risk in running Stravairina as my only crossover dress, because not only when this card overdresses, it gets the free draw to possibly see more Stravairinas and replace itself, but also, unless they swing into a next turn or they board wipe me without non-targeting, they can't touch Stravairina. So our Parjay is very solid. It gives protection, it gives replacement, and it literally just makes a board out of nowhere, and none of this requires you to be on Nirvana. So, 4 of a Parjay, and something I want to say about these grade 2s, and I didn't realize it till it came up in the anime when you did it, and I want to say, like, I don't really give the anime shit because I don't really like the anime that much, but I will give them this. They did a really good job with it, where they used Nadika to cross overdress with Vils and gave Vils the skill Garo has, and then they used Aparajay to cross overdress into Garo and gave Garo the skill Vils has. I just like how, like, that's how it happened, you know, like they just basically gave each other their skills while they were both on the board at the same time. I think that was just so cool in my opinion. Even if it's like just a very small detail. It's probably like the one time I'll ever willingly praise the anime. Anyways, 4 of Parjay, very solid, works for early game rush, replaces itself, and can basically make Stravairina immortal, any overdress immortal for that matter, just in this deck specifically Stravairina. 4 of, just very good grade 2. Then we have one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck, sadly, of Snuggling, Blaze Maiden, Ryu, Great Turn Set 5K Shield, 10K base, auto when she was rode upon by Chakrabarti, Phoenix, Dragon, Nirvana, Haiva! I know it's Jiva. I said it in the other deck profile, though. I prefer saying Haiva because it feels like wings are unwrapping compared to Jiva, where it feels like a spear is being thrusted towards someone. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck. So after rolling Prayer Dragon, reveal it, put it to hand, shuffle your deck, and then contains rear guard against with 5K powerful Prayer Dragon, same column. I do kind of hate skills that are always like copy and pasted from like a ride deck unit to another ride deck unit. But hey, we never got to use them. But if the day ever came up where we were able to, like I tried to fit them in here, it would be amazing with a deck that literally just spams out rear guards out the wazoo, and then these things become consistent 13k / 15k beat sticks. If only they were a talisman, and then Stravairina would just a talisman or Prayer Dragons for some arbitrary reason. I mean, they do have tails, so there's that. But I mean, like, for some reason, Reno's a human, and we literally see a tail right here, but whatever. Either way, though, very solid. Free top 7 for a Prayer Dragon search. This is the deck that will go off the most consistently because you have 16 Prayer Dragons. There's a higher chance you will hit a Prayer Dragon than any other deck, because in my other decks, I only run 10 Prayer Dragons at most, and yeah, I still hit them pretty consistently there, so I'd be damned if I hit less here when I have more Prayer Dragons over almost double the amount consistently. So, one of Ryu, just very solid grade 2. Sadly, not on the main deck, but hey, you got your Prayer Dragons. We move on to our grade 3s. We're on 4 copies of the big boy himself. The reason why this deck exists in the first place. Blazing Holy Sword Equip. Stravairina. Grade 3, Twin Drive, Persona Ride, 13k base, Crossover Dress, 1 Trickstar, and 2 more Prayer Dragons with different card names. So you are required at least 2 Prayer Dragons with different card names. You cannot use 2 Aparagies or 2 Nadikas. You have to do like Aparaji Nadika or Nadika and this boy, or like this boy and this boy, etc. Or you could also do more as long as 1 Trickstar is present among the 2 or 3. And anyways, his skills. Continuous from a rear guard circle. During your turn, if he's in the crossover dress state, he gets plus 10k power, so 23k base, and then all your Vanguards and Nirvana their card and get triple drive and plus 10,000 power on top of that. The main concern I heard about people with Nirvana, when Nirvana Haiva first came out, is that they always compared it to Mahar, which I hated. Like, and that's like one of my worst gripes. Like, people compared it to Mahar within the first set, where Mahar had 4 sets of support, had a trial deck to piggyback off of, and had more than double the amount of overdresses / crossover dresses, obviously, that Nirvana Haiva had. Now, if they were going to go match for match against regular Nirvana, then obviously first up Haiva wins hands down. But also, like, that would have been much more of a fair fight. And still in set 7, people were arguing that point. In set 10 is where I was willing to, or not set 10, well actually I kind of set 10. Set 10 is where I was willing to draw the line, because at that point, you know, regular Nirvana Mahar Nirvana and Nirvana Haiva had the same amount of support sets now, where Nirvana Haiva finally had 4 sets, and at that point Mahar, I will admit, was better. Now, the thing that put it apart, triple drive was my main concern that I kept hearing. We now get that, and a 23k base, and here's the best part, this ability stacks. If you have 2 of these in the front row, they don't need to be at full power. They just need to be at the front row and in the crossover dress state, which is very easy to do in this deck that can spam out rear guards. The Vanguard's a 33k B stick with triple drive. Cool. And then auto rearguard. When this unit in the crossover state stands by your Vanguard's ability, doesn't have to be a Nirvana, most likely will be, but if they ever made us one that could stand that wasn't a Nirvana, there we go. If your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, Counterblast 1. Stand all of your Talisman or Prayer Dragon rear guards. So if you have another copy of this on board, whether it's in the crossover state or not, stand it. If you have your entire board of Prayer Dragons, stand them. We get a board mode attack. But then, ladies and gentlemen, if he has 5 or more original dresses, so he guaranteedly gets 3 off of just this alone. So if you use the other 2 Prayer Dragons that you haven't used yet into his original dresses, you can remove all of your opponent's rear guard markers. So Draco-Chi markers, Excel markers, Force markers, etc. And then retire all of the rear guards non-targeting. Board nuke. Like, this is a double board nuke. It nukes markers and rear guards at the same time and board stands. This is board everything. 4 of Stravairina. It gives the Vanguard triple drive, so people that were complaining about it can shut the hell up about it. He himself has 23k base. He gives the Vanguard 23k base, so he's basically pseudo-Mahar. And he literally board restands without needing to be at full power, and at full power he board nukes. This is the sole reason why this deck exists. Like, this skill right here is why this deck exists, and it's done that it works as consistently as it does. 4 of Stravairina. If you see this thing come down at full power, just prepare to say bye to your board. They're not living. Like, unless they can't be retired, they're not living because this thing gets around targeting. Then we have our last card of the deck, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck of Chakabati, Phoenix Dragon, Nirvana, Haeva! I know it's pronounced Jiva, I still prefer Haeva. Grade 3, generic persona, 13k base, active Vanguard Circle, hard once per turn, ditch a hand card, just 1 Trick Star, and 1 Prayer Dragon from your drop zone, call it to Mirror Guard. Okay, you're getting something out of this. Like, you're getting a Trick Star, probably the discard target, and you're either getting this, which can then just call 2 more Prayer Dragons, this, which you're probably going to combo well into Stravairina, if not just be an 8k beat stick booster, this, which combos into a nice Stravairina double guard combo, or this, which can combo into more rear guards, aka this, which can then combo into targets for Stravairina. So, yeah, I like how, again, inherently, if you play your cards right, get the pun, you can make a full board out of nothing and then just Stravairina targets in about 5 seconds with a combination of Nirvana and this thing, and into this thing. So, yeah, your 3 most important cards are there, and I like how, like, they can go down descending grade 1, 2, 3, or 3, 2, 1, technically. And then his other abilities, Auto Vanguard, when he attacks Crown Boss, when choosing rear guards in the crossover state and stand it. So, you know, in this deck, there's only 1 unit in the crossover state in Stravairina, but if you play this deck like I do, aka you just pull it consistently via Divine Intervention, yeah, you ain't going to have problems pulling that off, and the board restand is not going to be a problem at all. So, yeah, moral of the story, don't be afraid to rush and beat the ever-living crap out of your opponent while you have the chance, because if you miss with Stravairina, you might be dead. But, yeah, Stravairina has so much pressure, you can probably afford to take that chance. So 3 in the main deck, 1 in the right deck. If you hit Persona Rise, great. If you don't, well, Stravairina exists. And without further ado, that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is very fun to play. I know I'm, like, taking the gamble of running all these, like, not running any other, like, at least recyclers or resource users for Talisman, such as Mirrors of Irina or Bills of Irina. And I would suggest if you fear that, run them just in case. But, yeah, no. I've pulled it consistently enough to where I feel like I can take chances, and honestly, with the way this deck works, it's like go big or go home type of thing. Like, if you take that risk and you pull that risk off, you're probably walking away the winner, and if you don't, then, I mean, you either got really unlucky or your opponent got really lucky. I have seen this thing board nuke people. It is very hard to come back from a board nuke, especially if it board nukes markers, and they get a board restand following that. Like, it is not easy. And they pulled the over, too, because, by the way, neither of those abilities are once per turn, so if you pull the over on top of that, well, double board restand. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to really here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, don't forget to follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.